Hi guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new video. So just before I get into it, I just want to say I hope you all had a fantastic Christmas and I hope you all have a great new year as well. But yeah, the reason I'm here is to show you all the Blu-rays and DVDs that I've picked up for the month of December 2022. So yeah, let's just get straight into it. So just got a few DVDs to go through first, and the first one I have here is a movie called Deadly Pursuit, or as it's otherwise known in the US as Shoot to Kill. And yeah, this is a fantastic movie that I have seen before, but I've been looking to get it on physical media for a while. And it stars Sidney Poitier and Tom Berenger. And Sidney Poitier plays this police detective who is on the hunt for this killer. And at the beginning of the movie, the killer gets away and manages to escape into the forest deep within the mountains. And he's able to join up with this group of hikers. But what's interesting about this movie is you don't see the killer at the beginning of the movie. So when you actually do see the killer, it's when he's amongst this group of hikers and you don't actually know which one of the hikers the killer is. And I think it's quite an interesting spin on a movie like this, and it turns into a bit of a guessing game, at least for the first half of the movie. But yeah, it's just a fantastic action thriller. Sidney Poitier is great in it. It's great to see him as like sort of an action hero, but he's got a bit of a humorous side to him as well. But yeah, it's a fantastic movie from the 80s, and yeah, if you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend checking it out. But yeah, that is Deadly Pursuit. Next DVD that I picked up was Fried Green Tomatoes, or Tomatoes for anyone in the US. And yeah, this is a movie I'd always heard about it. I'd always heard the title referenced numerous times, but I never really knew much about the movie. It stars Kathy Bates, and she's this woman who finds herself in this small town in Alabama, and she meets this elderly woman played by Jessica Tandy. And her character basically tells Kathy Bates's character about different people who've lived in this small town in Alabama. And in particular, she talks about these two women who formed this very close friendship. And it kind of just goes through their life story. Yeah, it's a pretty decent drama. It's kind of like a sort of like a chick flick, I suppose. If you like movies like Steel Magnolias and Little Women, it's kind of a bit similar. It was nothing special, but it's a decent little drama. But yeah, that is Fried Green Tomatoes. Next up, we have The Longest Yard. I've been on a bit of an Adam Sandler kick at the moment. I grew up with a lot of his movies from the 90s, and I've been picking a lot of those up that I didn't already own on DVD or Blu-ray. But this was one of the movies from his filmography that I'd never actually seen before. I watched it recently, and I thought it was okay, but I do feel like this movie was probably where Sandler's downfall started to happen, because then he went on to do movies like Click and Don't Mess with the Zohan, and I Pronounce You Chuck and Larry. Not the greatest of movies, in my opinion. And yeah, I thought this one was okay, but it didn't make me laugh that much. But yeah, I'm glad to have seen it finally. But yeah, that is The Longest Yard. Next up, we have Pet Sematary 2. Now, I'm a huge fan of the original Pet Sematary. Kind of grew up on it. It scared the hell out of me as a kid. I love the book. It's probably my favourite Stephen King novel. But for whatever reason, I just never ever got round to seeing this sequel. I think when I was younger, I always used to think that it just didn't really need a sequel. It didn't warrant having a sequel. But I found it in CEX, and I think it was about £2, £2, and I just thought, yeah, okay, I'll give it a go. And yeah, it was okay. Nothing special, nowhere near the level of the first Pet Sematary movie, but it has some pretty fun moments. Clancy Brown plays a pretty good villain in it. But yeah, it's probably not one that I will be revisiting in the near future. But yeah, anyway, that is Pet Sematary 2. Next up on DVD, we have Say Anything, starring John Cusack. And yeah, this is a movie I've been after for a while on Blu-ray, but every time I try to find the Blu-ray, it always seems to be quite expensive. But in my local CEX, I found this on DVD for £1, and I thought, you know what, for a movie like this, I'm happy to just settle for the DVD. And yeah, it's a pretty good movie. I think it's the first movie directed by Cameron Crowe, who would of course go on to direct the likes of Jerry Maguire, Vanilla Sky, Almost Famous. But yeah, I think this is probably one of his best films. Great sort of coming of age comedy drama with John Cusack trying to win the attention of this girl that he has fallen in love with, but she's kind of a different class from him. And there's also the girl's father who doesn't approve of him, and yeah, he just has to overcome all these obstacles in order to win the attention of this girl. And yeah, it's just a really enjoyable story. Some great moments in it, great soundtrack as you'd expect from a Cameron Crowe movie. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and that is Say Anything. And the last DVD I have here is another movie also directed by Cameron Crowe. I believe this was the second movie that he directed, and this is one I have seen previously, but I've been meaning to pick it up. And it is 1992's Singles. And yeah, this is a movie that basically revolves around a group of young adults living in Seattle in the early 90s, and it just kind of goes between each character and the lives they live, the relationships they have with their respective partners. And yeah, I think this is a great movie. I remember I watched it initially because I'm a huge fan of grunge music from the early 90s, and the soundtrack is just full of great hits from that era. Even band members from certain grunge bands like Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and Pearl Jam, they all cameo in this movie. So yeah, at the time I first saw it, it was right up my street. But upon rewatching it, I think it's a fantastic movie and really underrated. And again, probably one of my favorite Cameron Crowe movies. But yeah, that is Singles. Right, so on to the Blu-rays now. And the first one I have here is a movie called Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. And yeah, this is a fantastic movie from, I think it was from 2007. Stars Ethan Hawke, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Marissa Tomei. And Philip Seymour Hoffman and Ethan Hawke play brothers who they work for this company, but they're in sort of financial trouble, and they concoct a scheme to steal some money from their father's business. But it all kind of goes a bit pear-shaped, it goes wrong, and then things kind of escalate from there. But this is just a fantastic thriller. It kind of has sort of a Coen Brothers kind of vibe to it, but maybe a little bit darker, a bit less humor. But yeah, just a fantastic thriller with loads of twists and some amazing acting, especially from Philip Seymour Hoffman. I don't think I've seen him any better in a movie, but this one, yeah, definitely check this movie out if you've not seen it. That is Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. Next Blu-ray we have is The Bodyguard, which I picked up from CEX for, I think, about £3 or something. And this is a movie I had not seen in years. It had been so long since I'd seen this movie, I could barely remember it. I remember growing up and this movie being everywhere. I remember the Whitney Houston soundtrack being everywhere. But upon rewatch, I don't really think this movie holds up well. I don't think Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston have any sort of chemistry together, despite the fact that we're meant to believe in the love story between them. I find the story itself just a bit bland and not very exciting. And yeah, it just wasn't really for me on a rewatch. Yeah, there's not really much I can say that really impressed me with this movie. Yeah, I can't say much more than that. That is The Bodyguard. Next up, we have The Cable Guy on Blu-ray. And this, I believe, is the HMV exclusive Blu-ray. And yeah, I missed out on this at the time it came out. And now it goes for quite a lot of money on places like eBay. But I found this in CEX for £10. And it might seem like quite a lot for a Blu-ray like this, but in comparison to the prices it's going for on eBay, it was a pretty good price. And the movie itself, I absolutely love this film. I know a lot of people consider it kind of like the black sheep of Jim Carrey's filmography. I know some people find it a bit too dark, a bit too weird, but it's right up my street. I think Jim Carrey is in top form on this movie. And yeah, it is a bit darker, but I just love some of the jokes in it. I think the humor's great, and I just really enjoy the story. It's weird, it's bizarre, but it's right up my street. But yeah, that is The Cable Guy. Next up, we have Contact. And yeah, this is a movie that I'd actually never seen before. For whatever reason, it passed me by. and I'd only just gotten around to seeing it now. And I've got to admit, this movie wasn't really for me. It kind of feels like this is where Robert Zemeckis started to go downhill as a director. With that being said, though, he did go on to do Castaway and What Lies Beneath, and I do actually genuinely really like those movies. But I do feel like this is maybe the start of his sort of downfall as a director. I just didn't really care for the story in this one. I found it a bit slow, a bit too long for my liking. But I know this movie does have its fans, but I'm glad to have seen it. But yeah, it wasn't really my cup of tea. But yeah, that is Contact. Next Blu-ray we have is The Great Escape. And yeah, this is a movie I've seen multiple times, certainly around the Christmas period. I always remember it being on and I'd watch it, but I've never actually owned this movie on any sort of physical media. And I saw it again in CEX for a pretty good price, and I thought, yeah, why not? Let's pick it up so I can finally have it in the collection. I think it's a great movie. I do feel like the first 2 hours of the movie, because it's a 3-hour movie, and I do think the first 2 hours can be a bit slow in places. But that last hour, when like they all escape and they're trying to evade the Nazis, it's just really tense stuff, and it's just a fantastic final hour to the movie, and it really saves the movie for me. Yeah, it's a classic, great movie. That is The Great Escape. Next up, we have a Blu-ray that I picked up from HMV, and we have Payback, starring Mel Gibson. And this is a movie I remember seeing when I was about 10 or 11 years old. And I remember at the time, the movie just wasn't for me. I think I probably felt it was a bit too dark, a bit too bleak. I probably wanted a bit more humor, say from, like the Lethal Weapon movies that also star Mel Gibson. So yeah, at the time, it wasn't really for me. But I've always heard people talk about the director's cut of this movie. And with this Blu-ray, you get the theatrical version and the director's cut. So I thought I'd give it a go. And yeah, I ended up having to watch both cuts because it had been so long since I'd seen the movie. And yeah, I'd have to admit, I definitely prefer the director's cut to this movie. The director's cut kind of makes it a very different movie in places, but I think it has a much better ending, and I just think overall it works better as a movie. And yeah, I would say this movie's probably jumped up to be one of my favourite Mel Gibson movies now. I had a great time revisiting it. But yeah, that is Payback. Next up, we have a new release, which is Smile. And yeah, I know virtually nothing about this movie. I've not sat down and watched it yet. I've seen the trailer for it. It does look pretty creepy in places, so I've got high hopes for it. I don't know whether I'll like it or not. I know horror these days can be quite hit and miss for me, so hopefully I'll enjoy it. But yeah, I virtually know nothing about this movie. But yeah, that is Smile. Next up, we have another pickup from CEX, and it is Airplane, and this is in the HMV Premium Collection. And I picked this up mainly to upgrade the existing DVD that I have for it. I've seen this movie multiple times, and I absolutely love it. The humour is very silly, very literal. It's not going to be for everyone, the humour, but for me, I have a great time every time I watch it. I just think it's absolutely hilarious. But yeah, that is Airplane. Next up, we have a movie from the Criterion Collection, and we have 5 Easy Pieces. And yeah, this is a fantastic movie starring Jack Nicholson and Karen Black. Jack Nicholson plays this guy who works on like an oil rig, and he lives with his girlfriend, played by Karen Black. And he comes across as being a very sort of average character, but as it turns out, he actually comes from a very wealthy family. He's a bit of a piano prodigy, but he doesn't really want anyone to sort of know about this. But in the end, he has to go back to his family home due to a family emergency, and he ends up bringing his girlfriend along, but he starts to worry that maybe his girlfriend and his family may clash due to the differences in class and the differences in personality, and he starts to sort of reevaluate his life in a way. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on in this movie, but great acting from Jack Nicholson, of course, and yeah, I thought it was just a fantastic movie, and that is 5 Easy Pieces. Next up, we have a 4K title, and this is one I actually picked up on day one. I don't normally tend to pick up sort of catalogue titles on 4K on day one, normally because they tend to reduce in price after a few weeks. But with this one, I just couldn't wait. and we have The Driver, and this is a fantastic 1970s thriller directed by Walter Hill, and it stars Ryan O'Neal, who plays this sort of freelance getaway driver, and we have Bruce Dern, who is the police detective, hot on his trail. He'll do whatever he can to apprehend Ryan O'Neal's character. And yeah, it's just a fantastic sort of cat and mouse thriller. There's some great car chases, great shootouts, and yeah, it's just an awesome movie from the 70s. Very underrated, but yeah, definitely check out The Driver. Next up, I have a couple of 4Ks that I picked up on the HMV 2 for 24 sale, and the first one that I have is The Batman. And yeah, this is a movie that I saw in the cinema at the time it came out, and I had a pretty good time with it. I did have a few issues with the movie, but on the whole, I did really enjoy it. However, on rewatch, it wasn't as good for me. I don't know if maybe the movie's still a bit too fresh for me, but I didn't enjoy it as much when I rewatched it. I find this movie a bit too long, a bit too slow. There's a few too many subplots in there that just feel very unnecessary. I think production-wise, set design, costumes, cinematography, the movie's fantastic, but I think it does lack a bit in terms of story. But I'm still glad to own it on 4K finally, and hopefully when I rewatch it again later down the line, I'll maybe enjoy it a bit more. But yeah, that is The Batman. And then the other film that I picked up in that 2 for 24 deal was Don't Look Now. Now, this is a movie that I've seen multiple times, and for the life of me, I could never get into this movie despite the hype it gets from a lot of people, and it's often regarded as a horror classic. But for me, I've just never been able to get into it despite really wanting to. But I finally decided to get it on 4K because there's been instances where I've finally appreciated a movie after getting it on 4K. And yeah, I'm happy to say that after rewatching it on 4K, I'm finally able to appreciate this movie for what it is. I don't necessarily think it's a scary movie, but it's just a fantastic thriller, a bit of a puzzle of a movie, very ambiguous. You have to piece a lot of things together. There's an iconic ending, of course. It's a movie that's open to interpretation. It's not a movie that will be for everyone, and it's certainly taken me a very long time to appreciate it. But I'm really happy to say that now I do, and it looks fantastic in 4K, and that is Don't Look Now. Next up, we have another 4K, and this is one I picked up from CEX, and it is Top Gun Maverick. Yeah, I don't need to say too much about this movie. I know it's a lot of people's favourite movie of the year. I was never the biggest fan of the original Top Gun, but when I watched this, I just had an absolute blast with it. And even though I don't really have the nostalgia for the original, when that music starts playing at the beginning of this movie, I kind of got chills, and I just had a great time with this movie, and I'm looking forward to rewatching it on 4K because I've heard such great things about the transfer. But yeah, that is Top Gun Maverick. Next up, we have a box set from 88 Films, and we have Dragons Forever. Now, I recently did an unboxing for this where I gave my thoughts on it, so if you want to check that video out, I'll leave a link in the description below. But yeah, I think this is probably one of my favourite releases of the year. I just love the artwork on this set. The movie's a lot of fun. The 4K transfer is great, and yeah, just a fantastic box set from 88 Films. But that is Dragons Forever. Next up, we have another box set from 88 Films, and this one is The Iceman Cometh. I've only just recently acquired this box set, so I've not actually sat down and watched the movie, but from what I've read about it, I think it's basically Hong Kong's version of Highlander. And I'm hoping it's going to be a lot of fun. It certainly looks like a blast, and again, really nice box set with all sorts of great features and great limited edition contents. But yeah, that is The Iceman Cometh. And the last pickup I have for December is Ju-On The Grudge Collection from Arrow Video. And yeah, I had an absolute ordeal getting this box set. I initially ordered it from Arrow. It got delayed because of Royal Mail strikes, and then it got lost. So I ended up getting a refund, but then lo and behold, a few days ago, it showed up at my door. So I essentially got this collection for free, which is quite nice. And I'm really looking forward to watching these movies. I've only seen one of them, which I think is just titled The Grudge. It's not the first movie chronologically, but it's the most well-known movie in the collection, and it's the only one that's on 4K. And yeah, I really enjoy that movie. It's a creepy horror movie. It's kind of like a fun spin on the anthology genre, whereas it takes place at this one house, this one location, but it follows different characters staying in that house at different points. So there isn't really like a main protagonist in the movie. It's more like the house itself is the protagonist. And yeah, there's some really creepy stuff in the movie. And I'm really looking forward to checking out the other 5 movies, I think it is, in this collection. And yeah, as usual from Arrow, a lovely box set, great artwork, lots of special features and all that. But yeah, that is the Grudge collection. So there you go, guys. Those are my pickups for the month of December 2022. Really hope you've enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments below if you've picked up any of these releases or you have any thoughts on these releases. I would love to hear from you guys. But until then, I will leave the video there and I will see you all again on the next one. So take care, guys.